don't I make your lives a little bit better? Doesn't it make you smile and feel better and feel warmer deep inside when you sign on to YouTube and you see, hey, Spaz has got a new video out. It's me, your buddy, SpazPhoenix, the YWC Reality Check. Even though my buddy Jeff Hardy just got robbed on Impact, congratulations to Rob Van Dam, by the way, and fuck off, I'm doing a video. I am here to bring you this latest topical video. No, it's not an Impact review, don't worry, for those of you that like to shit on Impact. This is all about the draft, and the draft seems to be the next sort of big thing that everybody's talking about. British Fist, NJ and Mr. Parkin just did a fabulous, fantastic, fake draft on their account. I'm going to be, if I remember, if I don't, somebody will remind me. I'll put the link in the description box below. You guys can check them out. They are pretty fantastic, and the logic behind everything that they did is definitely there, but my draft is very, very simple. I've been talking loosely about the theories around my draft for a couple of weeks now. I've talked with great wrestling minds like NJ, like Johnny Thunder, some of the Horsemen, Bone Duster and some of his friends, etc., etc., etc. It originally rotated around a 1-for-1 trade between Raw and SmackDown, but I've changed it up a little bit. I'll tell you what the draft is first, and then I will get into a deeper, not necessarily a dissection, but an overview or an analysis of why I've done what I've done. And before I do that, yes, I'm aware that Raw being a super show, which has everybody on it, and John Laurinaitis being the overseer of both shows makes the draft virtually irrelevant. And yes, the bigger one, when you hear my draft choices, is going to be, yes, I realize that what I'm suggesting will never, ever, ever, ever happen. I am fully aware of this. It's a fantasy booking. It's a what I would do if I was in their shoes type thing. So don't anybody go and have a heart attack. All right, all right. Now, this draft that I would do is basically a 4-move draft. To Raw from SmackDown, I would move Daniel Bryan and Cody Rhodes. To SmackDown from Raw, I would move Dolph Ziggler and, wait for it, John Cena. Now that everybody's done having their heart attack, the people that stick up for Cena and have their theories about why they stick up for him, now that you're done having your heart attacks, the people that are more on my side of the fence that hate John Cena are done having your heart attacks. The WWE brass, who don't really live up there because I don't work for WWE, I'm basically looking at my ceiling right now, but in Imagination Land, they are done having their heart attack. Now I will explain why. Dolph Ziggler is going stagnant on Raw. Dolph Ziggler is a great talent going to waste on Raw. He had an amazing run as the US champion, has had a couple minor altercations with other people, but other than that has been relegated to low card. Basically, his best stuff recently is a less than 10-second match with Brodus Clay and getting headbutted down the ramp by Brodus Clay the week before. His performance this past week on Raw, his part of the show was to set up Vicky, altercating with the Funkettes and being scared of Brodus Clay jiggling. That is not where Dolph Ziggler needs to be. Put Dolph Ziggler onto SmackDown for a couple of reasons. There is not a whole... Fuck off, I'm doing a video, god damn it. Guys, I swear to God, my phone is dead until I try to start doing a video. I guarantee, from me to you, I turn on this switch and there is some way that it is attached to that phone over there. But anyways, you put him over on SmackDown and he will bring a lot of flash and a lot of eyes to SmackDown. The other reason I do this, and it's more on a personal level, it would be in such a way that Swagger and Vicky stay on Raw. This move has multiple points to it. It's to separate him from that little stable that he's in, because I believe that is definitely part of what's bringing him down. They're forcing him into a tag team match with Swagger in a company that doesn't have a tag team division. It's pointless. And he's gone past the point. Anybody that's heard him on the microphone, he doesn't need Vicky to be his mouthpiece anymore. So bring him over to SmackDown, away from those two, and give him the Intercontinental Championship, because Cody Rhodes did an amazing job of elevating that belt, and it's tied to a rock now in the form of the Big Show. He needs to grab that belt while it's still got some credibility, have a good long run with it, use it as a stepping stone into the main event World Heavyweight Championship picture, because he's the show-off, he's the flashy guy, he's the Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, you know, look at me, look at my charisma, athletic, fast, flexible guy on a show where most of their bigger names are just big brute power guys. And big brute power guys have their place. They're just not that exciting in the long run. So a stark contrast to guys like Kane, guys like Orton, guys like Big Show, Mark Henry, Sheamus would be a firecracker like Dolph Ziggler. Bring him in, help him bring the Intercontinental Championship back up, whatever it's lost by being on the Big Show. Use it as only a stepping stone to the World Heavyweight Championship picture. Now, Cody Rhodes to Raw. Why would I do that? Cody Rhodes, we have seen already, can save championships. He did it for the Intercontinental Championship, and yes, I am vindictive, I am selfish, I want to see him come to Raw, make a statement on his very first night, destroy until there is nothing left Santino Marella, carry the U.S. title back to the prominence that Dolph Ziggler had him at. You might notice that I'm basically having Cody Rhodes and Dolph Ziggler swap places so they can mirror each other, help themselves out by elevating those titles the way they've already done on the shows they were originally on, and that is by design. Now, with that, Cody Rhodes, come in, carry the U.S. Championship, bring it back to prominence, have him lose it to somebody else that actually deserves it. I mean, you know, you give it to a younger talent like I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, like a Justin Gabriel, but bring the title back to prominence so that when Justin Gabriel wins it, the title itself is important enough to help Justin Gabriel out. Justin Gabriel, I'm only mentioning as an example, I'll say again. Eventually, I want to see Cody Rhodes in a world title picture. Now, why do I want to see him on on Raw? Is because I want to see him go up against other wrestlers. I'm sorry, right now on SmackDown, other than Sheamus, you've got all the giants. You've got Randy Orton, who he fights amazingly with, but we've seen enough of it. Other than that, you've got, you know, Kane, Mark Henry, The Big Show, who he's already fought with, and Sheamus, which we've seen before. I want to see him go into there with other wrestlers, like CM Punk, like Chris Jericho, depending on how long Chris Jericho stands around. I wouldn't mind, honestly, you know, Cody Rhodes versus Daniel Bryan, because I've also said I'm going to move Daniel Bryan to Raw. Now, am I saying I want to see Daniel Bryan on Raw? I want to see Daniel Bryan on Raw because of for the same reason that I want Cody Rhodes to be on Raw. I think the combination of Cody Rhodes and Daniel Bryan, in with names like CM Punk, in with names like Jericho, like The Rock, if he's gonna get himself in the WWE title picture. Now, would it only be for one night? But I would love to see even a stare down, even a quick altercation between any of those, you know, younger, smaller talents and a guy like The Rock or a guy like Brock Lesnar, because I think they deserve it. I think if it wasn't for the size and strength difference, I think a match between Brock Lesnar and Daniel Bryan would be fantastic. Do I want first to see that between Brock Lesnar and CM Punk? Absolutely. Now, the big heavy hand of this whole draft, and this is where everybody thinks that I am nuts, drafting John Cena to SmackDown. Yes, John Cena is the figurehead on Raw. Under the current WWE lattice work, WWE setup, Raw is a super show. So SmackDown and Raw talents are both on Raw. John Cena could still be on every Raw broadcast, even if he was a member of the SmackDown roster. And if they decide to stop Raw being a super show, obviously they would draft him back to Raw. I get that. I am realistic enough to admit that. But in the meantime, you could have a bunch of small benefits from this. Every time John Cena did appear on Raw, and they go, hey, you know, so-and-so is going to take on SmackDown's John Cena, it would drive the SmackDown name into people's heads. It would make them pay attention more. B, the next problem people have with putting Cena on SmackDown, and you'll notice I didn't put Randy Orton back on Raw. I've got the two biggest names, supposedly, on the same show, and people always say that they're so sick and tired of seeing Randy Orton versus John Cena. By far, not what I'm trying to do. Not trying to set up John Cena versus Randy Orton. I'm trying to have them as placeholders in different places. Randy Orton, you've seen me. You've seen me in multiple videos on this channel talk about how Randy Orton has done phenomenal things for the mid-card. He never really, except for when he was feuding a little bit with Cody Rhodes, when Cody Rhodes had the Intercontinental Championship, never really involved himself in the mid-card title picture. He was basically boosting the mid-carders that weren't involved in that title picture, which is a great thing, because even the mid-carders and even the wrestlers in general that aren't in title pictures still need to be legitimized. So, you've got the mid-carders that are going for the IC title. Fine, no problem. You got those mid-carders going up against and trying to best Dolph Ziggler now, because Dolph Ziggler's now holding the Intercontinental Championship. That's fine. The ones that aren't chasing a championship are still showing their grits, their guts, and their determination by going up against a well-established name like Randy Orton. Now, have John Cena hold that same place in the main event scenario. Now, you've got one or two people going after Sheamus, going after the title, etc. You've got I don't know, you've got Mark Henry wants another shot at Sheamus or something like that because he feels he was robbed, he feels his title was taken away while he was injured, whatever. Say Mark Henry goes and has his shot at Sheamus in the world title. That's perfectly fine. You got a power match, it's great. You got a guy like Christian that comes back. You got a guy like Christian that comes back who's been plagued with injuries and has had a run of unfortunateness. Now, if you bring him back and immediately toss him into the title picture, you'll have people bitching about him the way they bitch about Alberto Del Rio. But if you got Christian who comes back to SmackDown, wants to make a big name for himself on SmackDown, he sees now that John Cena is on SmackDown. John Cena, debatably the biggest name in the company, welcomes John Cena to his first night on SmackDown by walking down to the ring and slapping him in the face. You've got a Christian versus John Cena feud. Now, am I saying that Christian should necessarily go over John Cena? Absolutely not. You could build Christian as a legitimate superstar in a feud with Cena. Just make it look legitimate enough. Just make it look legitimate enough so that Christian still sort of reminds the world that he's there, even though he's not quite in the title picture yet. And because on SmackDown, John Cena would be part of the roster. On Raw, as we've seen, John Cena kind of exists in a bubble sort of above the roster. And this isn't me starting to bash on Cena. This is me actually giving Cena a lot of credit. John Cena actually exists in storylines above the roster. He's in feuds with The Rock, who basically didn't touch anybody else. He's in feuds with Brock Lesnar, who's basically not touching anybody else. It's kind of like Triple H and Undertaker going into WrestleMania. They had a feud going, but it didn't have anything to do with the current product. The Rock and John Cena didn't really affect the rest of the roster in a kayfabe storyline fashion. It kind of existed in its own bubble on top, and I'm thinking that John Cena is going to exist in that same bubble sort of on top of what's going on in the rest of the roster, whereas he could, on SmackDown, flip that coin and be right in the meat of the storyline, right in the meat of the roster. And I think the difference between Cena on Raw and Cena on SmackDown could really be outlined by that. Not only that, but you would have this guy who's having these, almost bigger than WWE rivalries, and whatever credit he accumulates from being in those rivalries, whatever credit he accumulates from taking a beating from The Rock, from, getting in there face to face and fist to fist with Brock Lesnar, he would be bringing that credibility to SmackDown, and he would be bringing that credibility to whoever he was trying to bring up or put over on SmackDown. I think it would benefit absolutely everybody. So I've rambled on long enough to hope that you guys have understood what I've had to say. How would I change the WWE? Bring Daniel Bryan and Cody Rhodes to Raw, take John Cena and Dolph Ziggler, put them on SmackDown. Everybody else will kind of fall where they may, because moving just those four guys creates about 100 different match feud scenarios. And the fact that everything exists on Raw with the Super Show format, anyway, only compounds only compounds the amount of storylines you can have with all these guys. These are all guys that need to be on the rise. The other thing I would say, you guys know I am not a fan of thrown together tag teams. But, big but, on the night of the draft, I would have a scene in the back where Cody Rhodes and Dolph Ziggler sort of see each other passing in the hallways. One of them sort of says to the other, hey, come here, I want to show you something for a minute. We're going to dominate the whole WWE. They form a tag team for a short period of time. Let me be clear. For a short period of time, they say, hey, I'm going to go grab your title. You go to my show and grab my title. We're going to show what these titles can be worth. And we're so arrogant that we're going to hold those titles while we hold the tag team championships. Now, what happens from that is they go on a tear. The two of them as a pair exist as a team on both shows because the tag team title exists on both shows. And they are so arrogant that they go after the tag team championships as well as they hold the IC belt and the US belt. Now, what does this do? This gives the two of them individually and collectively a lot of extra time on screen, which I think they need and I think they deserve. Eventually, you toss the tag team championships on them, which, yes, I will admit, it'll bury Epico and Primo a little bit, but when they've had a short run, when somebody's pissed off enough, when they've ticked off enough people, when they've caused enough shit and whatever, and everybody is sick of them, dominating both shows with all of their bullshit, one team will stand up, and the team that they eventually drop the tag team championships to will have a whole lot more behind them because these guys elevate belts separately. Imagine how they could collectively elevate the stock of the tag team championships. And think about this. Because the team that beats them for the tag team championships can say, yeah, not only are we the new tag team championships, but we beat the tag team champions, the IC champion, and the US champion in one tag team title match. And that would be the booster to whatever team gets it back from them, whether it's Primo and Epico in a rematch, whether it's the Usos, whether it's Rex and Hawkins, which I really hope come to some television show sometime soon, whether it's Gabriel and Kid when they're good to go. Not necessarily that I want to see them have a long tag team title run. I think the two of them as a team could put over a legit team like the Usos, like Primo and Epico, etc. So, all of these changes that I could see from moving around just these four guys, I would love legitimately. These are things that I've been thinking of for a while now. I really had the fire lit under my ass to do this video by British Fizz doing their video. I want to encourage everybody, either down here in the description box below, in the comments, or make me a response video. What is your fantasy draft? What is your fantasy draft? Who do you want, where, and why? I'd love to see where this conversation goes. You guys know the number one thing I want to do on this channel is create constructive conversation. Create a debate even. Create a debate, you get with somebody else, you draft 5 guys, they draft 5 guys, tell me what you would do with Raw if you were in charge of Raw, tell me what you would do with SmackDown if you were in charge of SmackDown, or tell me what you would do if you were John Laurinaitis in charge of both and didn't really give a fuck and you just wanted to fuck with people. No matter what perspective you're taking it from, I would really love to know your thoughts on this video, on the draft, on the brand extension, on Raw and SmackDown. I've rambled long enough. I'm going to go refill my drink. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Please keep this conversation going. Don't be a stranger. I'll talk to each and every last one of you later, and I am tagging out. Bye, guys.